Let's bring it back home now, because domestic politics has been at the forefront for this week, and that is because polling is showing a surge in One Nation votes. Is it the cause of the split in the coalition? Well, you can't discount that entirely. Most polls are showing that the primary vote for One Nation is in the low 20s. That's pretty good for a not a fringe party, but a minor party. But how likely are we to see a One Nation government? Join me live now is Redbridge Group Director Simon Welsh. Simon, it's extraordinary that we're even looking at the numbers here to see if it is possible. But hey, here we are, early in 2026. Get your bingo card ready. Low 20s, it's a long way from forming government. But is it likely? Could it be possible?
Yeah. Thanks, Laura. Yeah, look. I'm probably going to come in and play the boring cold water tipper in this particular circumstance. I think that the fundamental problem. So while absolutely we're seeing One Nation that primary vote surge, and it is remarkable that we're having a conversation. Some pollsters have got it at 18, some have got it in the low 20s, like you say. It's remarkable that we're having a conversation that it's in those zones, but it's still a long way to go, because the fundamental problem that we're seeing is that we're not creating sort of more conservative voters. So this is not a story about, sort of progressive or centrist voters flipping over to the right. This is a story about the right-wing vote moving around. There is a little bit of Labor leakage, and I'll come back to that in a second. But by and large, it's about that vote moving around. So the same problem that's existed now for the Liberals for some time, which is to be competitive as a party of government, they need a primary vote. The coalition needed a primary vote, high 30s, low 40s, around that 40 mark as a ballpark. The same logic, the same numbers apply to whether we're talking about a One Nation, Nationals coalition, or whatever it is. So even if you put 10% on the One Nation poll, but if they do form now we're talking hypotheticals, if they do form a Nationals alliance, depending on what happens in Queensland with the LNP, if that puts 10% as a coalition, you're still a long way shy of where you need to be to be forming that government. So I think what we're seeing really in that Conservative side is we're seeing these parties tear themselves apart, chasing the same voters. And really, it's a competition for second place.
Yeah, so
not a competition
the Nats and One
for
Nation
government.
absolutely in competition. You can see that crossover has been there for quite some time. Should we contemplate, or do the Conservative side of politics need to perhaps contemplate a coalition of One Nation, the Nats and the Liberals? Could that happen?
This is where it gets really interesting. I mean, I always leave the internal party machinations and all those sorts of things to others, not my bailiwick. But the problem for the Liberals with that is, first of all, the Liberals are in competition with One Nation. The Liberals have largely been pushed out of suburban Australia. They're now very much a sort of either outer suburban or regional party as well, which was, again, these all just feed into those tensions of the coalition, right? They're chasing the same votes. And so they're chasing the same votes as One Nation. So it doesn't hugely grow the poll. The other problem that they've got for the Liberals, and this comes back to what I was just saying about the Labor, is, there's a little bit of leakage off Labor to One Nation and that sort of conservative working class voter. But what we're seeing these early signs of is the moderate Liberals that are left on the Liberal poll, and there's not as many of those as there used to be, are now talking to us when we put them in groups and in surveys about tactical voting. That is, they would vote Labor to prevent One Nation getting near the levers of power. So if you talk about a coalition, a three-way coalition, I think you would see those voters pretty quickly move. And then again, all you are left with is these three parties sharing what probably amounts to about 40% of the vote. So I think there's all sorts of minefields in trying to create that coalition. Now, that's not to say something could come along.
But if you look at the polls as well, Simon, we talk about this, a major party vote only makes up about I think it was 52% on last count. So a lot of other people putting their first vote with a minor party. So whilst this is really an existential problem for the Liberals and the Nats right now, for Labor, it is a problem too. Less in the frame right now, but the progressive side of politics, you know, it could easily flip. We can see where this could happen. They've got a problem too.
Yeah, they've got a problem on their left flank, which is obviously less severe than what's facing the Liberals at the moment. But there's also the risk, and this is where I think, you know, Labor should not get too complacent, is there is the risk that something else forms in the right. You know, it's something comes along that can combine the populism that you see in One Nation with a sort of a sophistication, if you will, of what a major party might bring. Because that right-wing vote is kind of swimming around at the moment. So it's not sort of particularly steadfast. Even though the One Nation vote is increasing, that's not particularly steadfast. And you know, I'm thinking here about things like yesterday, you know, where you had those marches and those sorts of things. There'll be a lot of people that are sort of thinking about voting One Nation will see some of those sorts of things and, you know, see neo-Nazis with images of Pauline Hanson's will go, oh, I think I'll drift back. But if something else comes along, then that is absolutely a risk. And I don't think we should discount that, and Labor should not be complacent.
Where do the Teals benefit here? Surely there's you know, some benefit here. Difficult because they say they're not a party. They're independents, but might that equation change for the Teals as well, where they're a stronger political force if they actually say that they're a party?
All this is good news for the Teals. The Liberal Party dysfunction, the sort of the perception of the party drifting right, that'll again those sort of those moderate Liberals that are left on their pile. Where are they most prevalent? They are most prevalent in Teal type seats, and they are voters who would much rather vote and will quite happily vote independent rather than jump over to Labor, because there's those sort of, you know, just cultural and just the way, you know, their voting history. It's pretty hard to jump over to the other side, but they would quite readily vote for an independent. So yeah, certainly as long as this dysfunction, because that was a key part, that was something that sort of got missed in a lot of the Teal narrative from the 2022 election was, there was a lot of focus on climate and those issues, rightfully so. But really, a lot of it at its core was just dissatisfaction with dysfunction of the Liberal Party. And you know, so as I say, what we're seeing at the moment is just manna from heaven from them.
Oh, well, I'm glad they've improved in the dysfunction front. Not quite, but they've got time. Hey, look, they've got nothing but time.
It's only January.
Exactly, they've got nothing but time. Simon, great to talk to you as always. We'll see you soon.